I have one question. Let's turn to page 188. Let's go through a little bit quickly, a few sentences here. I have one very serious problem here. The Almighty informs Avram that he's going to destroy Sodom. He's contemplating the destruction of Sodom. So that's earlier. Now page 188, sentence 23. Avram approaches, and Rashi says he came fairly strong approach. And he says, are you going to kill the righteous along with the wicked? I think we can live with that. Another question, why should he assume that? But I understand, God, okay. I agree there's a lot of wicked people in Sodom, but why should you destroy the righteous? Perhaps there's 15 righteous people. Then he comes with an argument on page 189. Aren't you going to save the entire place because of that? God, how it's not fitting for you to kill the righteous together, to kill the wicked together, the righteous with the wicked. You're making a righteous person like a wicked person. God, how can you do this? Then he goes 190. God says, if I find in Sodom 50 people in the middle of the city, I will save the entire place. And there's a whole litany afterwards. He goes down to 45. Finally, at the end, God agrees that after 10 righteous people, he's not destroyed. I mean, okay, I understand that Avram was the first Jewish liberal, but he's nuts. He should have been praying that Sodom should be destroyed. He comes to a city, and the person needs a bed. They cut his feet off. They stretch him. This is a place Avram is trying to preserve. I understand about the righteous. I can understand about the righteous. Which is his opening argument, volley against God. God, you're not going to destroy God. So of course I'm not destroying the righteous. But then he says, okay, now there's righteous people there. If there are, what are you destroying the wicked? Sodom is a hotbed of iniquity, a place of cruelty. In fact, the Torah tells us in its opening sentence, when it describes Sodom, their sins are very heavy. In last week's Parsha it says they're roim v'chatoim l'Hashem mo, they're anti-people, they're anti-God. Why should he be praying? Why should Avram Avinu be praying for that? I think the question would have been, he should have been praying to God he should destroy the city, the wicked. Why is Avram pushing to pray that God should not destroy Sodom? I'm having a real problem with that question. It's a terrible place. You get there, you get abused physically. I mean, there's a nice little story there in the Torah that the Rashi alludes to. This is actually the straw that broke the camel's back, Rashi says. Bring it to Rashi brings it. The Medrash, I thought Rashi brings it too. Yeah, here it is. Turn to page 187. The bottom Rashi. Next, about 5 lines from the bottom. Our rabbis expound the word Hakatsakosa refers to the crying of a certain girl. They killed through a grisly death. She gave some food to a poor person. And what they did is then they poured her and doused her in honey, unloaded a beehive, and she was stung to death. This is a city that a normal person's praying for. What are you trying to preserve? It's about not killing anybody. It's letting Jeffrey Dahmer go. It's like, I mean, we're shaking it over here. What do our brothers nuts? I mean, it's not just not. Chazal tells us a person that has compassion on cruel people is a cruel person, not a compassionate person. If you identify with evil and cruel people, that means you're not compassion. That means you're evil. You're cruel. That's the language of the Talmud Yuma. A person has compassion on people that are cruel is a cruel person by nature, because anytime you identify with something, it means you feel a kindred spirit. If you feel a kindred spirit with people that are cruel, it means you're cruel, not compassionate. Even if you're asking for compassion. The Talmud tells us that, actually regarding King Saul, he had compassion on cruel people. He couldn't kill Amalek, so that's not an act of compassion, that's an act of cruelty. Because to feel a kindred spirit with people that are cruel means you have cruelty in you. Not that you have, so what's going on here? What I've wrong? This is what we're saying. And a whole argument with God. This is just taking it to an extreme that sounds totally unreasonable. This question bothered me this week. I'd like to say a very interesting thing, and I want to share it with everybody. I think a very interesting idea. I'll start off with a very interesting medrash. There's a Yalkut Shimoni. We just went through the holiday of Sukkot. And we say a prayer that we should please God. Next year we should be sitting in the Sukkah of Orsha Livyosim, the Sukkah of the world to come, with all the righteous. There's two opinions in the Medrash. One, we should be there, or we should be in the Sukkah Sodom. What does that mean? We should be in the Sukkah Sodom. But I'd like to suggest that the philosophy of Sodom is the healthiest philosophy possible. It's the one philosophy that can sustain a society. I'll talk about where they went off. The philosophy of Sodom was not to be cruel to people, was not to hurt people. The philosophy of Sodom was to be intolerant of parasitic behavior. They wanted people to be independent. I don't know that it says anywhere they want great hotels, 5-star hotels, resorts in Sodom. You just have to pay for it. They're not an anti. You can pay for it. You'll get a 5-star overlooking the Dead Sea. You get a beautiful hotel, all tile, overlooking the Dead Sea in Sodom. They have plenty of business, a very wealthy place. There's no problem. They have plenty of guests, paying customers. What's the difference between a paying customer and a charity case? One of them is you're encouraging parasitic behavior. People are takers. You're not telling people they have to go out and earn a living. Sodom is pushing. They don't allow kindness, not because they're anti-kindness. It's because when you promote people taking from each other, people do not feel the responsibility to take care of themselves. It's an anti-welfare state. Sodom is, and that's the dilemma, and the whole human condition struggles with that problem, and that is why should I work if I can take from my parents? Why should I work? My parents, and not only that, I'm resentful. Now that I'm married, my father took away my credit card. It's already mine, his credit card. I'm resentful and I'm angry. And that we all struggle with that we want people to take care of us. We don't want to have to do it on our own. And by the way, all of creation, the ultimate premise, the creation is if God wanted us just to be takers, God would have created the world to come and all of us would be living in the state of nirvana. God wanted us to earn the world to come. That's the whole purpose of this world. God set challenges so we can earn it. So we shouldn't have the shame and the ignominy of being embarrassed, that we should be embarrassed to take. The biggest tragedy of modern society is nobody's embarrassed. It's like you earn welfare. Your existence entitles you instead of having to go out and do it on your own. Sodom is a very healthy, in philosophy, Sodom is an incredibly healthy society. Not only a healthy society we have to promote, and a philosophy we have to promote, and they're saying they give no quarter to anybody who violates that, because once there's one the breakdown of this, there'll be more. They'll be taken, and pretty soon it's going to be Sodom is going to be a welfare state. That is the philosophy of Sodom. I'll tell you that the Mishnah alludes to this. And that is, the Mishnah says that if somebody says what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine, the Mishnah says, it's an argument in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avos. There's one opinion is if what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. There's midah habeinimus. That's the way the average person deals. You're a fine person if you say what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. If I say what's yours is yours and what's mine is yours, then I'm a chassid. Then I'm a very pious person. But I say what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine, that's midas habeinimus. Means that's a reasonable position. V'yesh omer, in another opinion, the Mishnah is zu midas Sodom. You hear the rabbis are arguing whether Sodom is the reasonable position or the non-reasonable position. One opinion, now obviously we have to answer that because God did destroy Sodom and God thought it merited total obliteration, and yet there seems to be an argument in the Mishnah. So the way I understand it is like this: for sure, there's no healthier philosophy than independence, to promote independence, to make sure people earn, and to do everything. As parents, we should be promoting. It's tough love. It's much easier to give your child money than to withhold money and push him to take a job. It's much, much easier. Right? That's an easier position, especially if you have the money. That's an easy position. It's very tough to do that, but it's the same thing as holding away drugs from your child. That's what Sodom says. Whether I'm withholding drugs, I'm withholding support, it's exactly the same thing. It says money, support, when a child could make a living, is a drug. And therefore, I have to have tough love. And that's exactly what Sodom was. Sodom is the optimum and wonderful society. The problem with Sodom was, and that's really what the Mishnah is saying, the philosophy is a wonderful philosophy. However, there's a great danger in that philosophy. First of all, one danger is this works for those who can. Somebody who can make a living, and let's say, God forbid, a child, not everybody can make a living. They just can't. They don't have the skills, they don't have the dexterity, they don't have the mental ability. Not everybody can make a living. On that, how do they treat with those people? Or a person was in a car accident. I mean, there are all different things that a person is infirm, he can't do. How did Sodom do with that? So if it's a pure philosophy of teaching independence, you can't demand the person who can't be independent to be independent. That's a totally unreasonable position. So it's therefore somebody who for some reason was destitute and there was a fire burned down his house, whatever circumstances that are beyond the person's control, not because he didn't work, he worked, but work, there are car accidents, there's illnesses, were they charitable there? So that's one danger. So it's very interesting when the Navi tells us how terrible the people in Sodom were, and we know all the stories that they did to this girl, that people came in, they stretched them, they cut their feet off. The Navi has one criticism on Sodom: Yad oni ve'evyon lo hichziku. They didn't support the poor and the destitute. It's very interesting. The prophet, instead of talking about how disgusting, revolting, and cruel they were, all of a sudden the problem was they didn't support the poor and the destitute, which I think means he's saying is the philosophy was great. However, that philosophy can't be extended to somebody who cannot do it. There are people that can't do it, circumstances beyond their control, then you do have an obligation. You can only push a person, and should only push a person that can make a living, but somebody who can't, you're not allowed to. And that's what the prophet in his wisdom, in fact the only thing he has negative to say about Sodom, and we know so many other things, is giving us the insight that the philosophy was good, but it wasn't pure. The philosophy wasn't pure. What do I mean it wasn't pure? There's a mixture in that philosophy. What was the mix? A lack of concern for somebody else, a lack of generosity, a lack of kindness. It's true they want people to be independent, but there was no feeling of kindness too, because if there would be a feeling of kindness, then you wouldn't push independence on people that can't. So Yad Oni Vevyon Lo Hirziku, they weren't charitable, was a great shortcoming of Sodom. But that's all. The philosophy part was good. The malaise of Sodom was that it was a place devoid of kindness. Because people who can't, you have to be kind to. The second quality we know about Sodom is a very interesting thing the Talmud says. Let's say I have a house, I have a piece of land, I have a yard. And my yard, I'm not there, it's my summer home, Miami Beach, and I'm not using it during the winter, and somebody goes and sleeps in my property. Sleeps in, takes a pup tent and goes to sleep. So the Talmud has a very interesting question. I don't rent this out during the winter when I'm not here, my yard. He's not using my property, not diminishing it. Normally, this person, if he wants to find a place to sleep, has to go to a hotel. Me, I don't rent it out. Does he have to? Does he owe me anything for sleeping in my house? Sleeping on my yard, which means the way the Talmud phrased like this: to me, there's no downside. He got a benefit because normally on a regular night he goes to the Satai. Tonight he doesn't go to the Satai. He decides to sleep in my house. So to him, he saved $500. To me, I don't rent it out anyway. It did not. There's no downside to me. So Zen then he benefited. Zeloi chasar. I didn't lose anything. Whether he was there or not, I'm not in the business of renting out my place. And he certainly didn't do any damage. He slept in the yard. So the Gemara says that's a question whether I have a legal right to collect from him. So the Gemara comes out, the way Tosfos explains it, that's Kofin al Midas Sodom. That's Sodom. That I should charge a person for a night. I can't charge him $500, or maybe $50, because he received the benefit. When it doesn't cost me anything, that's Midas Sodom. So I understand what does that mean, Sodom? I begrudge somebody else's using my things. Let's say, what's the reason I resent that? And by the way, that's not a small problem that a lot of us have, begrudging somebody else's success. That's even when we're not the cause of success. But when someone is using me, I'm begrudging him. So that's Sodom. So I think the Talmud is pointing out there's another thing. Not only is there no charity, they begrudge others also. That's very unhealthy. On one hand, the philosophy is great. However, that philosophy should be tempered. The person that can't do it, there's money for the cripple. The person who actually it cost me nothing. Now it's true he hasn't earned it, but he's not taking anything from anybody. He's actually taking something which there's no loss to anybody. There's no loss to anybody, and therefore that's just begrudging another person, and that is also a problem with Sodom. Those are the problems of Sodom. But the philosophy that if you can, and rather than take from somebody, you have to do yourself. The sickness of Sodom was there were no charity, and they begrudged other people. I think that's what the Mishnah is telling us also. There's no doubt that I say what's yours is yours, and what's mine is a very reasonable position. What is the Sodom quality? If the reason I say what's yours is yours and what's mine is the reason I don't want to take it. If I say what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, I'm saying I won't take anything from you. That's good too. But what's not good is the reason I don't want to take from you is because I don't want to give if you need something. That's Sodom. The question is not, in a lot of things, it's not the behavior. The behavior could be perfect behavior. But what's the motivation for the behavior? And there will always be the litmus case which will bring out what the motivation was. If the motivation was that I want you to be independent, so if there's a case where you can't be, you're just held up on the road by highwaymen that took all your money, of course I'll give you. But if the motivation is because I begrudge you using my things, then I'll resent it too. So one opinion says the fact of this is what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, that's fine behavior. What the other opinion says, you have to be careful that the motivation isn't a Sodom-like motivation, that I resent having ever to give you something. I begrudge that you should use mine. And sometimes it's this, sometimes it's not that. You can't, on the face of it, you don't know. And therefore, that's the opinions are not arguing as to the philosophy. They're saying the objective phenomena of what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine could be reasonable, or it could be driven by, I begrudge you. So that's what you have to be very careful of. That's what Sodom is. So Sodom was a very, very, in fact, healthy place. Avram understands, as society, Sodom has to be preserved. The part of Sodom that teaches people independence, not taking, don't take the easy way, don't go earn a living, you have family that can give you a place to sleep, you have this, don't do that. And we do not allow to give it to family, we don't give it to friends because we're hurting you, we're tough. That's a very healthy thing. However, there was things in Sodom that it wasn't healthy themselves, insofar they took advantage of people who couldn't do. They took advantage of people that they just begrudged other people. That was their problem. On that, Avram actually has a very interesting thing. We're not talking about fundamentally the philosophy is wrong. We're talking about certain subtle motivations that are wrong. Listen, if there's 10 righteous people, they'll be able to change that. We're not talking about a horrendous society. We're talking about very subtle shortcomings. It is a society that has a subtle shortcoming that's huge, that there's no feeling of kindness, there's resenting other people. 10 tzaddikim might be able to change that. To change a person's behavior and to make it, I don't care if there's 1,000 tzaddikim, probably 1,000 tzaddikim can't change almost one person who's a philosopher with a strong mindset. He's doing absolutely right. However, this philosophy is fine. The shades of the philosophy on the side, or the excesses, are a problem. Therefore, Rabbi is saying, God, you can't kill Sodom. We need a Sodom has to be there. There must be a Sodom. The problems that they have, that they're anti-kindness, okay, God, the 10 righteous people, people haven't been tainted with that, they can change that. There's enough of an influence to change. It's a difference between changing a person's whole form of behavior and fixing up some type of subtle things that are improper. Just like I say, what they're doing is reasonable. There's a certain element that could be a motivation that they're doing it for selfish reasons. Okay, but that's not impossible to fix up, because you're not telling a person to change his behavior. For the most part, you're talking about fixing up some details. That's what Avram is doing. Sodom is a very, very important part of the world. And by the way, Sodom survives. Melech HaMashiach comes from Sodom. Isn't it unbelievable? The only place in the world that God could find to bring the Messiah is from Sodom, because the Messiah was from Lot impregnated his daughter, who eventually becomes the family of Moab, and that's where Rus comes from. It means Rus in her roots is Sodom. It can't be a coincidence that the whole world because the Messianic age is the time where people should have actually achieved the notion that they have to earn their keep, that we're now doing what's right and we're earning our keep. That influence, you need some Sodom. The Mashiach, that everybody wants the Mashiach, is rooted in Sodom. By the way, you also see over there in the story of Rus a very interesting subtlety. The story begins with there's a very wealthy person who was the leader of the Jewish people. There's a famine in the land. He's not giving any money. He's not giving money. Now, you could think he's a tightwad and he's cheap, but what did he tell himself? Yeah, I can give them money, but if I give them money, they're not going to... I'm going to be the banker of a society. When people went into King David, you know what he told them? And we need money. The first thing he told them is improve the economics. You work on building your economic situation. Let the people start creating barter, exchange. That's what every day it says when they went in there. His first answer was, "Suvis parnas zumi zum." Make sure that you increase economics. That was for sure the rationalization of the person. He was supposed to be the king. Elimelech was a progenitor before David was born, 4 generations before. He was eventually going to be the king. There's a famine in the land. He has a lot of money. He's not giving out food. And what did he say to himself? I never met a person who can't justify his behavior. And he was probably like anybody else. And he said to himself, of course I'd give money, but if I do that, the people are not going to, they're going to go in the largesse and they're going to just forget about the... So that was what he said to himself. And where did he move to? He moved to Moab. Because that's exactly the place where that philosophy is. Moab is a descendant of Sodom. The whole story of Rus opens up. This person, he wants to move. He can't live in Israel anymore. He just can't live. So where does he go? He has to go to a place where he is comfortable. He goes to a place that has exactly the same philosophy. In principle, take care of yourself. Giving money hurts people. Now, it was the same question there also. He could have been right, however, it's probably tainted now that there's a famine on a ad hoc basis, an emergency basis for a couple of years. You got to help the people. There are calamities. They're natural calamities. So natural calamity and a hurricane or something else, a flood. I mean, you don't do. You have to do. You have to do. If you are actually promoting independence, there's nothing wrong with sending money to Haiti, or there's nothing wrong with sending money to a society that's under some type of natural siege. That's fine. It must be that even though that's what we say, we want independence, but not sending money means we really don't care about that. So it's very much like Sodom, and therefore that's exactly where he goes. But with all this, over there he finds the girl, his son finds the girl that's going to be the mother of the Mashiach, because that's where you're going to find her. There has to be a feeling of independence. We just went through the holiday of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We were all in shul begging for our life, begging for help. We were all asking God for what? Asking God, please forgive us. Give us a little free pass. That's what we're asking for. We're all asking for a free pass. After that, God gives us a holiday called Sukkot. The holiday of Sukkot that comes out from the Midrashim, very clear. The holiday of Sukkot is, I give you a free pass. You know what it's like? It's like we have in the United States, the laws of Chapter 11. I'm sure you know a lot better than me. And I'm sure it's very frequently used today. But at the end of the day, it's a free pass, but there's a logic to that free pass. Because if you allow a person to accumulate debt that he can't handle, so what is he going to do? I'm not going to go to work for you. For all the money I make, I'm going to go to my creditor. I'm not going to work. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stay home, and I'm going to go to get welfare. So there's 2 problems. Number 1, I'm not contributing to society. And number 2 is I'm taken away from society. You give me a free pass that I'm not overwhelmed with debt. So what do I then do? I then start up again, and if I learn some lessons from my mistakes before, I'll make money. So first of all, I'll support myself and I won't be a drain. And not only that, I'll pay taxes, so I'll contribute. That's the logic of bankruptcy. The logic of bankruptcy at the end of the day is that you're contributing to the society. And if we don't do that, we're going to promote welfare. You're going to be on welfare because nobody's going to go to work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 so his creditor can get a new car. And that's the situation. I have no money, and if I work, my check is garnished, and it's not going to go to me. The theory is we're going to give you some incentive to work, and if you work, you're not going to be a further drain, and not only that, if you have some type of success, you'll actually contribute to society. That is the theory, too much to our chagrin, of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is not a free pass. It's not a free pass. The Medrash tells us. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is, I give you a pass now, but then comes the holiday of Sukkot, which has mitzvahs day and night. constant mitzvahs. And God says that, okay, I gave you, let me see, are you going to now try and be a productive member? I'm giving you many mitzvahs. I'm giving you mitzvahs that you can do day and night. I'm giving you the 4 minim. I'm giving you a sukkah that you can sleep in. I'm giving you mitzvahs. If you undertake to do the mitzvahs, and you're starting fresh, because when you're snowed under and drowning in sin, there's not much of a motivation to do any mitzvahs too, because I'm so far behind the 8 ball in sins. Okay, so I throw a couple of mitzvahs. No, you're clean. Why was God make us clean? So we should have an incentive to start acting the way we know we have to act. That's what the holiday of Sukkot is. And that, by the way, what I'm telling you comes out literally from the words of the Medrash. I just said it comes literally from the words of the Medrash as an example for a king that forgives debt, and he tells him, now start paying. That's exactly the words of the Medrash. That's what the holiday of Sukkot is. That's why it comes right away. That, okay, let me see. Are you taking advantage? That's what Sukkot is. Your chance to earn your keep. Please God, we should be in the Sukkah of Sodom. Sodom is the society that promises, that pushes, earn your keep. You were drowning in debt. I forgave you, but I didn't do it because I'm trying to take away your incentive to give you a free pass. I'm hurting you by doing that. I'm de-incentivizing you to do what's right. I'm doing something terrible, because if God doesn't care if you do right or wrong, there's nobody that's going to do right anymore. Well, God is saying that's not why I did it, so that you understand your actions have no consequences. It's that I want to free you from the burden of sin, so that now you will take responsibility to earn your keep. What we ask God is, please God, that's what we're doing now, and therefore we should merit next year to be in the Sukkah of Sodom. I think that's really literally the simplest translation of that Medrash. It's not a small thing to try and earn our keep. And unfortunately, most of us, after Yom Kippur, thank God I'm clean. Now I can do exactly what I want. And I'm sure there's people take advantage of the bankruptcy laws the same way. Okay, now I can, I shafted that creditor and that creditor, and now I can get away with more. Hopefully there's more reasonable people that understand it was a huge favor from society. Now they can contribute to society. I don't know what the percentages are, but that's the theory. And that's the theory of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur also. I was wondering, I know there's a connection, I don't know if I get the insight, maybe somebody can help me. I think the idea even of living in a sukkah is an idea of independence. And Rashi says a very interesting thing in Parsha Shlach. When Moshe Rabbeinu sent the spies to the land and told them, like, the strong people are people that live in unfortified cities. That means they rely on themselves. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. I think a person who needs less Boy Scouting, to go sleep under the star, that's to make a person give them a sense that I can control my destiny. I don't need everything to be provided for me. I'm the master of circumstances. I have a feeling that the sukkah experience is even that. The idea of sukkah, we don't really do sukkah right. The sukkah is where we eat a couple of meals. Sukkah is really living in the sukkah 24/7. And that's really what the sukkah experience ought to be. A person who can do that, and he doesn't have his air conditioning, he doesn't have all his creature comforts there, and he's, I can live like this. I think it's also, even the mitzvahs is somehow to give a feeling of independence, which I think connects to the feeling of, I want to earn my keep. I don't know exactly how, but I believe that there is a feeling of, when you are, like Moshe Rabbeinu said, when you don't need external things, walls and all type of gates to protect you, but you're relying on yourself, that gives independence. And there's a pride, there's a pleasure in that. I think part of that sukkah too. Remember, the way we're saying sukkah is to train us to want to earn our keep, to do it on our own. And I guess the less, it's like very interesting. We're right. The one thing that we all understand, we have to buy our kids a house. You just have to buy their child a house. I mean, you understand the feeling of earning a house on your own. I don't know if this Jewish kid in 10 generations remembers that feeling, but the sense that you earn your own house is not a small feeling. And, as parents, we violate this on a constant basis. We give them, but I think that the houses are really that you earn, you take care of your own living quarters is probably a very, very healthy feeling. But I say, I don't know, a Jewish kid that's had that 10 generations for the most part. Parents feel it. That's my response as a parent to give them that. So that probably violates. But again, there's nothing wrong as long as you're making sure that you're not, the child can't do it. That's true. There's nobody can buy a house today. He has a college degree, has $200,000 he owes the government when he gets out of college. And then after that, he needs to buy a house over here. You need a down payment today of probably $400,000 or $500,000 down payment of $400,000. That's on you can get a house with less than a 40% down payment. I doubt it. That's what you need. So that's probably if somebody can't do it on their own, maybe there is some we can give some leeway. But if a person can do it on their own, we're doing them an enormous harm. We have to teach our children to become independent. Because that just carries over. They don't take responsibility for themselves. I'll tell you a story. We're having problems paying teachers. I called one of the principals in a very wealthy city that within the walking distance of his school, which is there since 1951, he told me, there's 100 multimillionaires, Jewish people, who either went to the school, or children went to the school, or grandchildren went to the school. And then he says, by the way, there's probably half a dozen billionaires to walking distance. He said, we had yesterday, he said, I'll tell you, we had this following discussion yesterday. And that was a lot of these children who are now parents in the school, who been studying in Israel for a few years, and now the parents are bringing them back to their business. So the first couple of years, they support the kids. He says, we figured out that then the children come to us, they give them money for everything. It's not cheap to live in Toronto. It's an expensive city. It's a very expensive neighborhood. The homes are very expensive. In this neighborhood, there's not a home you can look at for less than $1 million. So there's nothing to look at. And they all buy them homes and everything else. They don't give them money for tuitions. Tuitions, they should come to the school and get free tuition. These are wealthy people doing this. And they're teaching their children to become more, instead of either give them more or let them go out and work part-time. He said he went yesterday to the Rav, who's the main posek in the city, and asked, would you please send out a letter that a grandparent is obligated to pay tuition for the school, for the children, for the grandchildren. So he refused to do that. But, the feeling that not only do we give our children, we also teach them to become takers. You hear that? You give your child enough money that they can live. It's 2 cars, and by the way, they're not driving Chevettes. They're driving nice cars, beautiful homes, but I don't give them enough money that they should be able to pay their tuition. Which means not only am I taking away their independence, I'm teaching them to go become beggars. Anyway, everybody should have a great Shabbos.